I was born in Montreal, Canada, province of Quebec. And well, I lived there until, I believe it was, 1947. My mother was a widow, and well, we lived in Montreal. And I went to boarding school. From boarding school, I lived with my grandmother in Brownsburg, province of Quebec, in Canada also. There was a lot of family. I had two older sisters and one younger brother. Lucille is the oldest, Hélène, and my brother is Jean. My dad was Laurent Gendron, and he was a serviceman, and he had died in the 40s, and he is buried in Holland. In Magog, in the park area, there was a memorial stone with all the names of all the men that served in the war. And one of them was my father, Laurent Gendron. And also my grandfather was the chief of Magog. So in the past, if you worked for the government, you were honored also. You know, it was wonderful. My mother was a student in New York City in Misericordia Hospital in Manhattan. And she met her husband, her first husband there. He was a doctor, and he died very young. And then she went back to Canada, and she met my father. And when he passed away, my older sister had polio, and my mother decided we should come to the United States so Lucille could get some help. And she made the inquiry through the O'Briens. That was her marriage name at the time. And so we came to the United States, and that took 3 years for us to come from Canada. And there was once a month you went to see the inspector. You were questioned, all different questions. Mother had to prove that she would have a salary and have a house to live in, and rental was paid. It was a lot of, I think, hardship, you know. So, and then we came, and then it was up to me to start going to school, which I could not speak English too well at the time. Mother took me to be tested. I was supposed to be in 5th grade, and after 5th grade, then if you did well, you went to high school. And after my test, I was told that I should go to high school. And high school was quite a challenge, believe me. I went to Andrew Jackson High School in Jamaica, and the teachers were wonderful. They spoke to me so I could understand. And when I went home, I tried to explain everything to my mother, and Mother explained so much to me. But one story I could tell you, I went to high school that day, and my class was on the second floor. I didn't know how to climb the stairs. Where was the stairs? And I asked one of the students if I could direct me to my class. And he says, oh, of course. And he showed me, he says, after you reach the second floor, you have to look for the third floor. So I was on the second floor. A teacher came to me and asked me, where are you going? I said, I'm looking for the third floor. She says, we don't have a third floor. So when she directed me to my classroom, and as I walked in, everybody burst out laughing. It was a big joke. And that young man was there that had tried to help me. He was sitting right there. And I couldn't believe it. So that's the way life started for me in the United States, you know. When I came to the United States, I had my neighbor, a few blocks down, she lived from me. She really took the patience to talk to me because I was not speaking English that well. And my mother had Lucille. She was in the hospital in Manhattan. So Barbara, my friend Barbara, said, you and I could go to Manhattan and visit Lucille. I said, yes. And she would help me out, you know. From Jamaica we walked to the bus stop, the bus to the subway to New York City. And then from New York City, we walked from 34th Street to down to First Avenue, from 7th Avenue to First Avenue. Alone, walking. And one day, and we would go see Lucille, and many times that hospital had guests, movie stars or boxers. You know, I don't remember the stars I met, but I had met a famous boxer. I can't remember his name now, but I was amazed to see how wonderful those people were taken care of. And they all had a good time. They went to class. They became my sister became a secretary for a famous gentleman that opened hospital and what is it called? A manufacturer for the veterans that came back. They were handicapped. It was wonderful. And Lucille worked there for many, many years. And but Barbara and I used to go down to see her. And then we were told that we had to be home by a certain time at night, on Saturday night. So one night, Barbara says, we have enough time. Why don't we stop and we'll go see Perry Como? I says, well, do you think we can be on time for the train and be home? Oh, sure, we'll have enough time. So we went to see Perry Como show. And when I got home, everything was fine. My mother was sitting watching TV, and who was on the screen but Perry Como. And I said to my mother, there, look on the left, that's where I'm sitting with Barbara, the third seat. So the following week, we tried to do the same thing. We made the show, but we had to run to catch the ferry, the subway. We were going to be late. So it was good. And this friend of mine lives way out on the east now, and I still get, at Christmas we speak to each other, and it's wonderful. We still keep in touch with each other. It's over 40 years for sure. My mother was a very excellent cook. My grandmother would cook with leftovers also, but she wouldn't trim the meat. And my mother would trim all the fat off and all that. She was so particular, but not my grandmother. Sometimes I wouldn't like it, I wanted to know who was going to cook that night. She made excellent steak, a sirloin steak. And she had learned that from a Chinese cook. The pan has to be like an iron pan, hot, and a little grease in there, or butter or whatever, not oil. And your meat has to, when you put it down, it has to sizzle on both sides. And it depends if you want it well done or not. But the key to the thing is when it's removed, then you add your more butter and your liquid. It could be a broth, and then you add a little brandy or wine to it, seasoning, and you bring it down, And the Chinese we were told the Chinese would add coffee, a few drops of coffee, black coffee to it. And boy, was it tasty. And then you have mushroom over it, and They were looking for a chef in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a private home. So I said, oh my goodness, I don't know. I was worried about doing that. I went for the job interview. I got help from my daughter and my son-in-law how to drive from Long Island to Greenwich, Connecticut. And I was amazed how people live there, amazed. And I gave her a menu for a whole week that I had prepared. And this lady asked me if I didn't mind cooking tongue. I said, of course not, because we were used to eat all that when we were young. She was very surprised, and I made it, and they were pleased with me. And on Sunday, it was always chicken. They ate chicken. And one day, the maid was scraping the plates, and I was taking all the leftovers, throwing it in the garbage. And the lady of the house came in, said, don't do that. She says, we have to eat the bones because it's so healthy for you. And I said, okay. At 4 o'clock, they ate their leftovers, and I used to come home on the weekend, and go back on Monday. But it really gave me It was an eye-opening for me because I didn't realize people live that well, you know? And you always hear about stories when people are through the war, so this was something else. Then I got another call to go to another person in Southampton. She was an elderly woman, the most wonderful person, very, very classy. It was something like a movie. You know, you got up in the morning, all I did was give her breakfast. She didn't want to eat. I convinced her to have her toast at least. She didn't want to have any lunch. I convinced her, please, you have to eat. I started cooking for her. And at 4 o'clock, the maid would serve her cocktails probably, and because she would have friends over, she would be dressed. Unbelievable. Long gowns, and it was so beautiful, so beautiful. Very classy lady. And one day, she came in the kitchen to thank me. And the only thing I had to do in the house is to cook and keep the kitchen clean, like the counters. I didn't touch the floors, the tables, nothing like that. Just the food and the sink. And I had finished wiping the counters. I went to the sink to wash my hands before I went upstairs to my room. And she came in to say goodnight to me. And she says, what are you doing? I said, I'm washing my hands before going to bed. She says, you can't do that. When you finish cleaning, you have to use silver polish to clean the sink. And then you never run the water after. I said, oh, thank you, okay. So, her house was so nice. And one day she wanted to have a friend over, her niece. And she asked me I said, I would love to make something for you. She asked me for my suggestion. I says, how about a nice souffle to start? And a salad with some chicken. Oh, she says, that's too much. I said, no, that'll be nice. Well, she says, let's see. You can make your souffle, but let's have another choice, just in case something happens to your souffle. I said, okay. She said, we'll make borscht. I had never made borscht in my life. She gave me the recipe. I did it. And she says, I will have the handyman come over to wash and clean the stove and polish. I said, look, thank you. He came over, he cleaned the stove, the oven. It looked beautiful when he left. And the next day I made my souffle. In the oven it went, and the maid and I looked through the window of the oven to see if it was raising. It was gorgeous. She says, Rita, look how beautiful that is. I said, I know. So I went to open the door. Excuse me, before I did that, I told the maid, you can have the lady sit. It'll be ready in a few minutes. And the kitchen was located before the dining room. The oven, the stove was facing the dining room door. And there was a table in the middle of the room. And I decided to open the souffle. I tried to reach for the rack, and the rack was stuck. And I try again. Something is wrong. She says, so the maid says to me, give it a little harder pull. And as I did that, the souffle came out the oven, slid down on the floor, hit the door of the dining room. And we both screamed so hard. And right away, the second maid came in and said, what's wrong? We told her, and the lady of the house came in. She says, Rita, that's why you had the second choice. Don't worry about it. So I served the borscht, and I had a lot of compliments. Some of my mistakes, but you learn from it, you know. Well, Marie was born in June, and we live in Maspeth, Long Island, Queens. And then we got a house in Roosevelt. And because then it was Bill was born, and we couldn't manage to have a baby. The apartment in Maspeth was a studio apartment. Every night we opened the sofa, we slept there, and Marie, the baby the crib was next to the bed, and she insists to hold my hand. So I would go to bed every night for months through the, what is it called, the railing and so she would, if she didn't hold my hand, she would cry. So, and then when we went to Roosevelt, she had her own room naturally. That was okay then, she learned. And Bill was January, let me see here. We lived from Roosevelt. Yeah, we were still living in Roosevelt. And it was wonderful, the family, it was a boy, My husband had all his friends from Manhattan come and see his son and his daughter. It was all, and we had, to this day, I have friends in California talking to me about those days, So it was good memories for sure. Marie was very conservative, I believe. Bill was more outgoing, but with Marie, I thought she was more reserved, in different ways. And I'm trying to think of stories. They were very good. I never had any problems with them. It was a blessing, believe me. I really wanted to have a house full of children, but it didn't work out that way, We would, my husband and I would have the kids dressed up, walk down in the neighborhood on the street to all our neighbors, and then at the end of the day, come home, and Bill would build a fire in the backyard, and all the kids were invited. I served hot chocolate, and Bill made roasted marshmallows and start telling ghost stories. And everybody laughed, and I thought that was awful because I have nightmares. So that was good. And I tried to bring the family, to have a tradition of French Canadian on Christmas weekend, Christmas Eve. I did it a few times with the neighbors. And one time, one of our neighbors insisted that we go to their house. And all that was, I was very surprised. It was just to serve champagne and hors d'oeuvres, It was something I had never seen before. But you learn and live. Tony was born. I couldn't wait to go to New Jersey? Yeah, New Jersey to see him, but I was committed. I couldn't do all those things, So later on, many years went by, and I was able to enjoy both families. Going to the studio, and then also my side of my family. And my grandchildren love to tease me. Oh, one day they would say, "You love to work in the garden." I said, "Yes, I would. I love that." So I used to go to Monroe and work in the yard and, play with all the stones and the flowers. And so the next time I went, Brian, the youngest one, and Tony said, "Grandma, we want to show you something in the backyard. Could you help us?" I went in the backyard. I started digging, and there was a snake right in front of me. I screamed. Mom came out and said, "What's the matter?" I said, "A snake. I can't work here." To be a great grandma is one of the most wonderful things, I'm sure. But I also feel that your children are important. To me, that's really very important. And the grandchildren, it's great. I have some of them, at the age of 2, they would hold my hand because I had to walk with a cane, and Rita would say, "Come on, I'll help you," trying to speak to me about it and hold my, "Come on, come on." There was Blake the same way, very thoughtful. Oh my gosh, if I need anything, they jump right away to serve me. That's wonderful. I thank God that I have the family. I think that worked out beautifully. We don't, there's never, like you hear people having dispute in family. This is wonderful. I'm very lucky like that. What I learned, I think it's so important to be all together, remain close by, and don't be shy to talk to each other. Tell each other what's in your heart. To me, that's so important. Månmel du som bäck, månmel du som bäck, en bäck du bäck trabäck. Kom över du månmel, kom över du månmel, chanter.